Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Gen Z stage for sadly our penultimate session of the day. We're about to dive into a topic that many of us are deeply connected with, and that is the fast-changing world of well-being. The past year has been unbelievably tough on mental health for all of us, which in turn has sparked a renewed sense of recognition and value for our mental well-being in the private, public, and third sectors. We're about to take a look at some groundbreaking innovations transforming this industry, led by some seriously impressive women who I deeply admire. Leading as our moderator is Ambika Mehrotra, who is the head of partnerships and development at Minds Foundation, an organization committed to eliminating the stigma surrounding mental illness. A special shout out goes to another phenomenal one-year-old ambassador, Raghu Apasani, who founded Minds and brought Ambika into our universe. Over to you.
Thanks, Saf. This is such an important topic and something I'm really passionate about. So it's been very, very exciting being a part of this today. When I heard of this topic, a lot went through my mind. Wellness, self-care, mental health, mental hygiene. All of these are a part of the ever-growing vocabulary that we have of well-being. And I realized that, the basis and the essence of the word still starts and ends with us. So that makes us the drivers of change, and it's really a very powerful thing. I'm really thrilled to share the stage today with two brilliant and inspiring women who are doing amazing work in the field. Morgan Hewett, who is the CEO of OptionsMD, and Esther Marshall, who is the founder and author of Sophie Says. While one is using and leveraging technology to bridge a very critical gap in treating treatment-resistant illnesses, the other is driving change right from the start, emphasizing on how the right education really does influence our behavior and that of the future generations. They're both pushing boundaries and they're really making a big difference. Without any further delay, I'll hand it over to Morgan. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and the work that you're doing, your journey so far. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me to be part of this important conversation. My story, unfortunately, starts with a bit of tragedy. In 2012, my older brother, Jordan, attempted to take his own life. After that, I watched him bounce around from psychiatrists and therapists over and over again, trying almost 10 medications, none of which seemed to help his debilitating depression. That's when I learned about treatment-resistant illnesses. Treatment-resistant depression is something that affects about 30% of people with depression, and it simply means that things like talk therapy or over-the-counter products just won't really help your depression. Oftentimes, you need something more cutting edge. The good news, though, is that the last 10 years has had so much innovation in mental health treatments, things from brain stimulation techniques to psychedelic therapy. There's so many options out there, but patients like my brother struggle to get access to the right one. And that's when I started developing OptionsMD. OptionsMD is a software company, and we use data and analytics to connect the right person to the right cutting edge treatment, eventually preventing them from things such as suicide and changing their lives for the better. So I'm really excited to be part of the stage and this conversation today.
Thank you so much, Morgan. It's so inspiring when you hear about someone's passion and belief, and that really drives change. With this, I'll please also ask Esther to come on and tell us a little bit about herself, your work, what inspired you to write.
Of course, my story is also similar with tragedy in that for the past 6 years, I'd been in and out of hospital with my younger sister, Rebecca, mental health wards, watching her suffer. First of all, they said depression, then they said psychosis, then they said psychotic depression, then we got another diagnosis of bipolar. In and out of hospital for months and months and months. And tragically, in January last year, we came home to a note, and the police came round to our house and told us that they'd found her body. So similar to Morgan, although I guess my sister eventually took the next step and we lost her way too early. There was only 20 months between us. We shared a room for the first 11 years of our life. We were super close. and it spurred me. I'd always spoken about mental illness and mental health and trying to break that stigma even before this, because it had been a long 6 years before, and seeing the health system in the UK and how much of it wasn't working properly. I'd always spoken about it before, but even more so after the tragedy. So I decided to take my corporate job at Unilever and carry on with the project that me and my sister had started together, which was writing children's books and being proactive around teaching children around the most important lessons in life. So we say that Sophie says making the most important lessons fun to learn, all about gender equality, self-esteem, self-confidence, and most importantly, mental health, all in a fun way, or really amazing kind of characters and everything like that, and just making sure that we're being proactive and teaching children. We've created an education hub, so there is kind of tech that people can download for free. So everything is inclusive as well, because that was my role at Unilever in diversity and inclusion, so making sure everyone has access. And I'm now doing this full time and trying to kind of build a legacy, because Rebecca was an amazing artist and she was supposed to be doing the illustrations. So I'm just trying to carry on her legacy as well. And that's why this is such an important topic. And I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Esther. Thanks for sharing that with us, both you and Morgan. As I said, it's really inspiring. Hearing this really motivates anybody, I'm sure, to get up and drive a little bit of change and do the best that we can. And I think this session today is also a really good example of how important it has actually become to talk about these things, to address well-being, share ideas, share experiences. And personally, I think I talk about it so much, but when it does come to those situations where we really need to prioritize ourselves and take care of ourselves, is when I find myself failing. So I think I just wanted to ask you both, firstly, what is well-being for you, and how easy and or difficult has it been for you guys on a day-to-day basis to choose yourself and your well-being? Are there any tools that have helped? I would love to hear your thoughts.
I've spent a long time running away from my emotions. I'm sure that Esther could relate to this. When my family was going through what we were going through, my way of coping was to first focus on my studies and then to focus on my career. And I just thought, hey, let me just ignore this situation with my family and try to be as successful as possible. Then it caught up to me. A few years ago, I was having the career of my dreams, working at Facebook, making more money than I thought that I ever would. And all of a sudden, anxiety and depression hit me like a tidal wave. And I eventually had to go on mental health leave. And eventually I left to work in the startup scene and to devote my life to this industry. But what I learned from that scenario is that you really cannot run away from your emotions. They will always, always, always catch up to you. So I think the first thing that we all have to do, even everybody on this call, is to be honest with ourselves. How are we feeling right now? And especially if you do need external help to process those emotions. I'll be transparent. Even after this wonderful summit today, I have my therapy session at 11 a.m. PST every Wednesday, and it is the most important meeting on my calendar, and is the one thing that never, never, never gets moved, because I know that I need third-party help to help me manage and regulate my emotions. So that would be my advice, is to, one, be honest with yourself, don't run away from your emotions, and if you need it, get external help.
Yeah, I guess I was similar in that once we heard that my sister passed, I thought, okay, just go into overdrive, help my parents do whatever they need, etc. And then I remember coming home the next day and picking up my son from nursery, he's 2, and looking at him and saying, if I don't sort myself out, I'm not going to be a great mum to him. And that's not going to help Rebecca's legacy. That's not what Rebecca would want. So although I tried to run, he has been like my light and my guiding light. And straight away, I sought therapy. I've been doing grief therapy every single week since she passed away. Exactly the same as you, is that it doesn't change. I have to have that session. nothing is more important than that. It's tough. Grief therapy is different because it takes you somewhere very, very deep, and sometimes that's scary, but it's the only reason why I've been able to get back up and do these things and come and talk on these platforms. Otherwise, similar, I think we both would have crumbled. You know, I don't know if you agree, but
yeah, it's interesting. Go ahead.
Sorry, it's kind of fueled like you've got this person behind you that not other people can see, but you know that they're there. They're like this other person cheering you on, that you know whether it's a good day or a bad day, they're going to be there and you can fall back on them. And so for me, especially because she passed away at the end of January, and then we went into lockdown in the UK in February, at end of February, I'd taken off a few weeks as leave. I'd literally just gone back, and then suddenly I was having to look after, back then, like an 18-month-old with a full-time job, and not being able to breathe because I then wasn't allowed to see anyone. So I figured, oh, this hasn't happened. When we all get out of lockdown, I'll open the door and she'll be there. It was a horrible, horrible time. It was really tough. And for me, I've never realized how important well-being is. Just finding those 10, 15 minutes, if you can, in the day to try and find you, to try and ground you, be that going on a walk, be that listening to a podcast, whatever it is that you find. It's imperative. Like, I don't think we have a choice on whether we want to do well-being or we don't.
And I was just going to add in that it's interesting what you're saying about it's imperative. There's no choice about this. And one thing that I will say, even though the wellness industry is something that we're talking about more, and that's quite important, we still oftentimes treat mental conditions like they are less important diseases than other life-threatening illnesses. Because of Esther's and I experiences with our siblings, you know, my brother actually, thank God, he was able to get the treatment that he needed, and now he's in a much better place, but there was multiple suicide attempts along the way. So we have a very intimate understanding that mental illness is a life-threatening disease, and it often results in fatality. Mm-hmm. So if you're starting to feel that pressure, you know, depression, anxiety, things that are kind of coming over in your life, you should treat it in the same way that if you got, you know, an early stage cancer diagnosis, you need to actually have external help and treat your mind with the same respect that you would treat other organs in your body.
Absolutely. I think it's also very interesting because unlike a lot of physical ailments that we have, we always know that there are certain medical courses, a medication course, a timeline which is attached to when we can anticipate to recover. Mental health and mental illness is still very gray because it's more intuitive than it is exhaustive. I guess it could be a case, as you both rightly pointed out, that we realize way down the line that it's something we really need to action on. And I was just wondering, like, if someone seeks help today for what we're currently feeling, but either they don't feel that that's enough or it's not effective, what is the path that is available that one should really take? Because again, there's no prescriptive right or wrong method here. What are the options that are available to people? And more importantly, are they even aware of those options? And I know, Morgan, you're very, very closely working in this area. So I'd love to know how technology especially is being used to leverage and build and bridge that gap.
Yeah, so I think what most people don't realize is how many options there are out there. So for mental health conditions, at least my company, we estimate that there's over 500 treatment options, depending on which condition you have. Those include, you know, almost 200 antidepressants that are currently on the market, as well as things such as non-pharmaceutical treatments, different types of talk therapy, or more cutting-edge treatments that are newly approved by the FDA, at least in my country, such as psychedelic therapy or brain stimulation techniques. And I don't even want to forget Eastern medicine, things like acupuncture, which has been practiced for hundreds of years and has amazing results with mental health. I think the challenge is figuring out what one is right for you. The standard way of going about that, frankly, is a trial and error. situation. And I even do that for myself. For example, my current therapist, who I love and adore, it took me 5 therapists to get to her. There was a lot of trial and error. It's a little bit like dating, trying to find which therapist you feel most comfortable with. But in terms of, if you are somebody who's in need of more pharmaceutical or cutting edge treatments, what my company tries to do is we try to take away that test and learn process, because we don't want you to ever feel like your body is a guinea pig. And so that's where we use things such as artificial intelligence to better pinpoint out of those 500 treatment options, which 5 or 10 could be a better fit for you. But ultimately, it's your decision based off of what you're comfortable with. I would say the first step is seeing a doctor. There are many tests that you can do really to figure out the severity of your mental health condition. You may think it's mild, but sometimes that's relative, right? So if you grew up in a family where everybody was anxious or everybody was depressed, you may think that your depression is mild in comparison to theirs, when actually you really are on the high severity level, and something like a medication could be a better fit for you.
Yeah, and I think I don't know as much as you around the tech space, but I think from what I understood and learned from my sister is that the issue with mental illness is that everybody needs a certain type of different medication or different amounts of medication, and that takes time to work out whether it works on your body. So we had nearly 3 months of trialing one medicine because they didn't want to go up too high because it was quite lethal, so they went up certain milligrams at a time, and it takes a long time, and there's certain side effects from some of these medications that aren't necessarily the nicest either. So I understand that tech is really like paving the way, and I'm really pleased, but I think people should be aware that this is not a I don't know whether it translates, it's the plaster, not the stitch, or the band-aid, not the stitch, and that it's a process, and that people should be aware of that, so they don't think that as soon as they see one doctor, everything's going to get better straight away. It's a journey.
Yes,
absolutely. And it's when you talk about it being a process, my mind goes to the fact that while there on one end of the spectrum, while there have been so many advances in the tech space, on the other hand, there's also a lot of stigma which is still associated with this topic. And it's a part of conditioning. I come from India, and while in my part of the world, we're still trying to normalize conversations around mental health. There's another part of the world which you guys are from, or Europe or anywhere else, where we're looking at revolutionizing what already exists and making it better. And a part of it, I think, has got to do with conditioning and the conversations that we're made a part of right at the very, very early stages. And today, because we are well aware and informed, is what makes the real difference. And so just again, I think Esther, you'd be really, I'd love to hear from you. I think Sophie says, when I read about your work and what you did, it was really inspiring, because I thought to myself that this is right. Like male dominated characters, always things from a male perspective, it's bound to make you always feel that there are very, very defined gender roles. So I'd just love to hear from you what your thought was behind that, and how important do you feel it is about educating children and educating people at the right time, so that it becomes a lifelong thing that we have.
Yes, and that's why for me I've started in this area, because it's vital, especially I think watching my son, it made it a little bit more clear to me. These kids, we don't give them enough credit. Like by 2, he gets what's going on around him. Mommy, why are you sad? And I'm not going to hide that from him. I mean, some parents do. I understand that it's a difficult subject to talk to, but we have a safe space that we found, which is our yellow armchair. I say, Mommy's going to go and sit on the yellow chair. She's a bit sad today. And then so he says, Mommy, I'm a bit sad. Let's go and sit on the chair. And it's not that I'm trying to make him sad. I'm trying to get him to understand his feelings. So now, he's nearly 3. He understands the difference between angry and sad and scared, and I'm really trying hard with that. And that's basically what I'm trying to do in the books as well. But it's fun. Okay. So Jamie in the It's Okay Not to Be Okay book is the one who's feeling sad, and his friends Jordan and Sophie help him feel better. and they take him to the zoo and they take him to the fun fair. But the underlying message is, let's find somewhere where you feel safe so you can talk. And, you know, getting children to understand what safety means, not you're scared of where you are, but do you feel safe to actually talk about what you're saying? And so with that, we've created kind of lesson plans and an education hub for teachers and parents to download all the resources to be able to teach their children about this. I think it's so important, and that's why I was really strict that I wanted Jamie to be a boy, to address the stigma of like the toxic masculinity as well. Your point, I guess, on the kind of European stigma and maybe in the US as well, is I haven't necessarily felt the stigma to, oh my goodness, your sister died by suicide. I get upset when people say committed suicide, because you don't commit cancer, and in my eyes it's the same, it's similar, right? You didn't commit it, you didn't commit murder, right? So there's little things around that. Or people say here, like my friends, family, whatever, will say, and they don't realize it, like, oh, I was killing myself laughing, you know, like little things like that to me get to me so much. So there's little bits here that I find really upset me. The place where I feel the stigma is more in the institutionalized system. So in the UK, we have the National Health Service system. The budget for that is massive, but only 1% of it goes to mental health compared to physical health. So right there, you've got institutionalized issues. That means that mental health is not going to be the same. So for me, that's where the stigma really lies. But I think it's so important that we get children understanding what they need to learn and be proactive, so they know that looking after their mental health is just the same as looking after their physical health by the time they get to, 5, 6 years old, which I'm guessing I didn't have that when I was younger, and I'm guessing the two of you didn't either.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, just following from this, I think how there's also now an association of wellness with money. So thinking that you need something external to achieve wellness, and there's nothing wrong with those things, but I think we've also developed a connection of some sorts which makes us think that wellness equals something that I can purchase, or something that I'm in competition for, or something that I have to acquire because it's not intrinsic to me. And I found that it's very, very true in today's context. There's just so much available. Do we feel like it's a part of the package that comes with this conversation, or is it, are we only focused on living maybe a long life versus a healthy life, or are both of them mutually inclusive? Do they go hand in hand? I would love to know how you guys feel about the industry, the ecosystem now, and especially as women who are navigating through the wellness ecosystem as well.
Megan, you go.
There's a commodification of wellness, which I think you just hit on, Ambika. The self-care industry, buy this face mask, buy this bath bomb, you'll sit in the bath and all of a sudden you'll feel better and all your issues will go away. And I think that we all know that that's just simply not true. Another thing that I'm seeing here in the US is a appropriation of a lot of Eastern wellness techniques. For example, the appropriation of meditation and yoga, but actually not being practiced in the Eastern context that it was originally created in. I think what we actually need to do is take a step back and look to many indigenous cultures, many ancient traditions, and get back to there. And many of these things actually cost nothing to practice, right? When you truly are practicing it. You can practice yoga literally on the ground you don't need to buy a mat, you don't need to sign up for a class or anything. So I do think that is a challenge. The other thing that I do want to talk about is what you mentioned in terms of many wellness things being cost prohibitive. At least in my country, we do now recently, because of Obamacare, we have medical services for people who are less financially secure. For example, in the state that I'm in, we have Medi-Cal for Californians. We do have laws that pass that mean that mental health services must be covered by government-funded health insurance. But at the same time, it is almost impossible to access those services. So in your plan, it's technically covered, but it may take you 6 months waiting for a therapist to become available, or it may take you 9 months to actually find a psychiatrist. And the reason why is because the government reimburses these doctors at a very low rate. So doctors are not incentivized to take government-funded insurance. They would rather take private insurance. So that's a huge, huge, huge problem. At least with my company, we do still work with people who do have government-funded insurance. We oftentimes try to find nonprofits to partner with so that these people can get free access to the mental health services that they need. But even that simply just isn't enough. I do feel like we need a lot of changes in terms of government reimbursements to make mental health services much more accessible to everybody.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the whole thing around the money and the wellness, I think because of that, people think, well, I need this big salary to be able to afford these things. But I don't know about you, Morgan, but I also, similar at Unilever, had a lovely salary, a lovely life. We're earning more money than I thought, similar. As you said, that was like, I totally get it. And now doing this, I'm earning less than I've ever earned. But I'm flexible and I can have my own time and I can go for a walk, which is completely free, or listen to a podcast, which is completely free, rather than spending loads on these wellness initiatives that I thought I needed to because I had the money. And I think it's about that change of mindset of what we actually need to look after our well-being, as opposed to what we want or think we want, rather than what we need.
I love that. I love the fact that it does really just come down to doing what we really feel like, whether it's as simple as a walk. It doesn't have to be something that we need to go out and search externally for long. I also was just thinking as we were talking that, all three of us come from a corporate background. We worked we know what a high stress, high pressure environment can look like. And there's a lot spoken about work-life balance, and personally, I feel like for me, it gets very difficult to achieve. So for me to even realize that I'm nearing a point of burnout or stress, or this could be something that I need to pause at and take a step back, becomes very difficult. And I just wanted to know from the both of you in your respective previous organizations or work life so far, how did you navigate that sort of environment? And I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from this because we all at some point go through stress and a lot of things that are going on, and we forget to do the simple things and we have to remind ourselves. So if you're struggling and you are unable to take action, any things that have particularly helped both of you navigate through?
Yeah, well, if I'm thinking about, my experience working at Facebook and then also starting a company now and having employees that work for me, I think the number one thing that a corporation can do, well, first is just to give mental health benefits, right? So make sure that the health insurance that they offer their employees have mental health benefits. But the second I would say would be flexibility. So what we know is that your mental health does not just take a pause between 9 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. There's no way you can turn it on and off like that, right? You can have a wave of anxiety, or you can have something, for example, a death in your family that just hits you like a tidal wave out of nowhere. And one thing that I try to do now with my company is making sure that the hours of working are very flexible. As long as things are getting done and it's moving towards the right direction, if you want to take a Thursday and Friday off because you need to rest and you would rather work on Saturday, finish the project up on Saturday afternoon or Sunday morning, why should I care as a manager, right? As long as things are moving along. I think that has been really important. Also in my own mental health right now, being an entrepreneur and being able to make my own schedule, I'm able to work in kind of free time so that I can ebb and flow with my own mental state. And when things need a pause, I can actually reschedule and take the time that I need for myself. So I would say any other managers who are watching this, just try to be a little bit more flexible with your employees.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I remember my first ever, it wasn't my direct line manager. He was the VP when I first moved into the team at Unilever. He was from the States. I'm not going to try and do the accent, but he was like, Esther, I don't care where you get your work done, whether you get it work like in the bath, whether you get it done in like a supermarket, like as long as it gets done by when it needs to get done, like I don't care whether you do it on a Monday or a Sunday, exactly like what you were saying. And that was like my first day at Unilever, and I was there for 9 years. Now, not everybody went by that, but I took that on board of, okay, I like that. He had the most amazing team that worked really well because people could ebb and flow, and everyone spoke open and honestly of like, okay, this person's going through something right now. Everyone step up, or vice versa. And I think it goes back to that whole thing around feelings. If you feel this trust with your team, everyone will pitch in for each other, as opposed to some teams that I worked in that no one knew anything about each other and everyone just got on with what they're doing, and people just carried on going even if they weren't good, which is exactly what you don't want, because then you get the burnout or you get people going off for months and months and months. So very similar to you, I think 100%. This flexibility now, I think, is so important. It was important before COVID, but I think so many people didn't realize how you could do it. But if we can try somewhere in all of this hell to find like one positive thing of COVID, I hope that businesses will start to realize that flexibility, and like true flexibility, can be done. And that, I think, will help so many more people as well.
Absolutely agree. I read a really nice quote the other day which said that unless you're willing to make a commitment to community and to ourselves, we won't achieve, we will never really be well. If even if we're waking up every morning and having our drink, our juice, and doing our yoga, but without that commitment to each other, we will not be well as a country and as a whole. So we really have to push each other, be there for each other, listen, and really, really listen. Use technology that's available, educate each other. I think that's the thing that will really take all of us a long way. So I completely echo both of your thoughts, and I hope that the positive silver lining arising out of COVID is one of these things that we now start to see more. Yeah. I've also got a very interesting question coming in from the audience of, have you come across any myths or false assumptions about mental well-being that we should look out for?
Yes, I definitely. The biggest myth.
How much time do we have?
The biggest myth that I've come across on at least a weekly basis, especially when I am talking to investors, is that people with severe mental illnesses lack the motivation to get better. There's a misconception that, if you are depressed, all you are doing is lying in bed all day doing nothing. Sometimes depression can be very debilitating and it can be very difficult to get out of bed. But at the same time, you are lying in bed with your thoughts, and oftentimes your thoughts are the enemy. If you have never had suicidal ideation, it's an extremely, extremely scary place, right? To have your mind telling you things that many times you feel is not true, but you just don't know how to quiet it. And so in that scenario, you're actually desperate for help in the same way that somebody who had extreme pain in their body would be desperate for help. I come across this myth because when pitching the business OptionsMD to investors, the biggest pushback that I get is, well, your target audience is people with severe depression, and they're not going to be motivated to actually use a platform like yours. So we had to prove them wrong. And in a matter of months, we got thousands of people with severe depression to sign up for OptionsMD. And our platform is growing at 25% month on month. So we are now able to confidently say, you are wrong. People with severe mental illnesses, they want help. They're actually seeking the right resources, and they're willing to try new things if it's presented to them. Oftentimes, that's what they need. They kind of just need a guide and a shepherd to help lead them in the right direction.
Yeah, wow. Good for you. My God. Yeah, tell them how long they are. I think in the corporate world that I saw, a lot of companies were like, we get it. We should give people mental health benefits and get them the right help. The myths or false assumption that I saw from a lot of companies, because I was working with a lot, was, great, we give someone their counselor or the therapist to go to, they will go away, they'll come back and they'll be better. Mental health, mental illness is not a thing that you go away and you get better and you come back. Again, it's this whole journey piece. It's the same with cancer. Like, you could be cured, but it could come back, you know, on any given day. You know, it's not that we control that stuff. And I think people need to realize that that's a huge false assumption, that it could be once and never again. Great, but it could be 10 times over, and the provisions need to be there, and the stigma for that person's career should not be faulted any less than anybody else.
Yes.
Absolutely. I couldn't have, you guys are amazing. I think that you covered what I was thinking of as well right now. I think that with this, we keeping in mind the time, anything else from both of you that you'd like to share before I just go on to closing the session that we've had? I know it's such short time. I feel like we just got started and we were just getting into talking about more of this, and there's a lot to talk about. But anything that you'd like both of you to say from your ends before then I move to closing?
Yeah. I just wanted to thank you, Esther, for your vulnerability. I was trying to hide it because I have a bit of makeup on and I didn't want my mascara to run, but there was many times when you were talking that I felt tears well up in my eyes because of what you said. Just really, really hit me. I'm so sorry for what your family has gone through, but I'm so proud of you for carrying on your sister's legacy. And it's really, really beautiful work. What you're doing. I think that conversations like this, and also founders and entrepreneurs like ourselves, we do need to be more vulnerable with what we're going through. People may not know this, but entrepreneurs have the highest rates of suicide of any occupation. There was one time that I went through something difficult with my business, and even an investor called me saying, "Hey, I just wanted to check on you because there's 3 other entrepreneurs that I know who were in your same situation, and 2 of them attempted to take their own life when they were in that situation." There's just so many pressure in situations that we're going, and we need leaders like you, Esther, who are willing to be open and honest and vulnerable about their own personal journeys. So I hope that we can also inspire people in this crowd to do the same. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, thank you. I'd say exactly the same through to you. I think I guess I have 2 asks, but my entire time when I was in the corporate world, it was very much people come to you because you have this title, right? And everything is about you and the corporate world and your title. And now I don't have a title anymore. I'm not some fancy person anymore. But the amount of people that I've met in this space that care, that genuinely look at you on a call, because I haven't seen anyone face to face in so long, but that would be so nice to meet you both in person one day. And see that people care, and actually that people understand this topic and people are fighting for change, is inspiring for me to see, and really heartwarming, and makes me think, okay, Rebecca's in safe hands. In 10 years time, things may be a little different. So I'd say a huge thank you to both of you, and also for anyone watching, like, please reach out, say hi, tell me what you're doing. Let's see if we can collaborate, because the biggest thing you could do is partnership and collaboration, and how we can make this bigger. So I do try and get back to everybody on messages, because I think it's so important to have that human connection. And then the last one is a little bit of a story about Rebecca, but it's an ask that I have of everyone. So I don't know about in the rest of the world, but in the UK, the rainbow became a symbol for COVID, of like a happier place. So everyone had rainbows in their windows. The day after Rebecca passed away, we sent an email out to family and friends because we didn't know how else to do it. And the moment that we pressed send to the email, the sky went dark and out came a rainbow. And for me, that was, she's safe. She's telling us she's safe. She's okay, right? And then we go into lockdown, and the only thing I'm allowed to do is go for an hour walk with my son. And I go for an hour walk, and everyone's got rainbows in their window. So everything that I've done with Sophie Says Okay Not to Be Okay, and all of them have rainbows on them. So I didn't want parents to have this whole message in the front of the book that talked about Rebecca and suicide, because that wouldn't be fair to parents. But the rainbow is on the book, so that it's in every single child who gets its house, so then Rebecca is there. My ask would be, if anyone ever sees a rainbow, please think of Rebecca and take a second.
Thank you so much for that, Esther. There's nothing I can say except that thank you both for being so vulnerable today, for sharing what you did. And it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to both of you and just learning a little bit and just being inspired. And you're doing great work. And to everyone watching, I think let's just all make a commitment to ourselves and to just strive to keep doing better every day. I'd just like to end today's session with a small quote to say that if we really start being honest about our pain, our anger, our shortcomings, instead of pretending like they don't exist, then maybe we'll end up leaving the world a better place than we found it. And again, thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm always so humbled, and obviously I've got some tears in my eyes as well, but I'm humbled by individuals like yourselves whose experiences of tragedy serve as a driver of work that really seeks to support others to ensure that they don't have to live the same reality. And in the spirit of commemorating Rebecca, would have been her 30th birthday just recently. So she's always here. She's always in the rainbows, and again, it's such a beautiful message there. So, and something that really struck me, coming out the gates of this, Morgan had said, we often treat mental illnesses as lesser things than other life-threatening illnesses, but treat your mind with the same respect as your organs. And I think, again, that's a big message for people who aren't that comfortable with this. And language does matter. And Esther had said something about the expression committing suicide. We have to be more intentional with how we speak about these deeply sensitive subjects. So it really is on each of us to really educate ourselves, and then how we can bring other people into the dialogue too, and how we can open those dialogues with people as young as children about mental well-being, so that this is just much more accessible, so no one has to really suffer on their own. And we also really can't underestimate the journey that's involved with finding the right treatment. I think that's something that a lot of people aren't familiar with, is that time, the testing that you talked about, and it doesn't always go so well, and the swing of feelings and emotions and it involved is so challenging. So hopefully with innovations like Morgan's, that process can just become much more fast and effective. So I cannot wait to see how it all blossoms over the coming months. I know your sign-up rates are growing by the day, which is encouraging to see. But as well with Esther's book, please do check out Sophie Says. They're great books. You can watch a great Pixar film, and they're also for adults. I would say the same thing for Esther's books. So I enjoy them myself, order them. And of course, check out Minds Foundation as well, because they're doing amazing work in India, particularly when it comes to eliminating the stigma and communicating mental well-being in a place where it's just not as advanced as it is in the US or in the UK. And the final thing that I took from this is the cardinal tip: beware of the commodification of wellness and don't fall into the traps. But thank you so much. We're now going to be taking a short break before we head into our last session of the day. So please don't go away. Stick with us and keep the conversation going on social media. Tag One Young World, CogX_festival. Use the hashtag CogX2021. And please follow the work of our amazing speakers. And thank you so much for today.